we go.
All right.
Mine hung up and had the little beach ball going around, so I had to force quit Skype.
Well,
So,
that.
all
I
these
think Eric.
technological glitches.
Yeah, well, when we got on the right before we got on the phone, Eric said he was going to mess with the prank us, is what he used. So.
Stop it, Eric.
And then as soon as I said that, your screen just flickered.
Really? Yeah, I think I saw that. So, Eric, my main man, what did you decide to talk about today? 9/11 terrorist or the topic of your choice?
Well, he was just kind of like, he was doing like this, like dancing around. I don't know
Okay,
what
he's
doing.
probably not as bad a dancer as me, but
Well, it was bad.
Close second.
He was trying to be cool, but you failed. Did you see how I was moving? That's how it was. It was
my God, that's flailing. I think you're just having a little seizure or something.
He might have been.
I think so.
Oh, my goodness.
So what do you think, Eric?
Okay, so he said, well, let's talk a little bit about what I was talking to Robert about earlier.
Oh, okay.
It was a couple of things. Mm-hmm. You have to remind me, Eric. And I hope you know what you're talking about, because some of them he and I were going back and forth. I was asking him all these questions, you know.
Yeah.
One thing he was talking about was everybody is too zip, 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 zip.
Yeah.
Right?
That's my life, man. That's how I am.
Well, he says, you know what? It's fucking with you.
Yeah, I know.
It's fucking with everybody, he said. Because you never give your body a chance to recover from it.
Yeah.
Your brain is stuck in fast forward, and it starts to burn your body out. And, you know, then you can't, you know, organize your thoughts. Everything seems very, well, it's like memory issues, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like everything is only just in this 5 little second period of time, and then anything further than that, you just can't even grasp it.
Yeah, and I think our technology and the media and stuff just makes our attention span shorter and shorter and shorter. What is it, like 3 minutes now or something?
I saw something on television about that. Yeah. But Eric says, you know, this is one of the things that will perpetuate chronic pain for some people. Their brains, not everybody, you know, but for some people, their brains will be stuck in fast forward all the time, and their bodies are in pain because the brain is never shut down long enough for the brain to do what it needs to do to calm those nerves down, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, and you know, so what people need to do is they need to start looking at what it is that's provoking that in them. You know, some of it is just a predisposition. Some people are just very kinetic, and they just have to keep move.
Yeah, I am.
But then they go overboard with it, right? Mm-hmm. Because not intentionally, you know, because they'll see all these, you know, in the world today, there's so much stuff going on that being kinetic, then they just want to keep up with it all, right? So then they become hyperkinetic. And then it's like, I can relate to what Eric's talking about because I've been the same way.
Me too.
Burn me out, kick my butt.
I know.
Anyway, and so, you know, he says you just need to slow down. He says he said, I'll give you an example this morning that got me on the topic of this. Mm-hmm. Robert was doing his stretches, right? And he was like, he said, and Robert was doing this one where you raise your arms up and down like this. Well, instead of doing it slowly, I was
you want to get it off your list, man.
Right. I was like, come on, let's get this over with. He's like, dude, just slow it down. Just slow down. That's the way he did it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, you know, because I found myself getting anxious.
Yeah.
Not realizing it was because I was like
flailing around.
You know?
So how do we do that? I mean, how can we put that in it's really hard for me to remember to slow down. I'm so caught up in the moment and my flurry of activity and thoughts that it's difficult.
He said it's because, you know, this goes back to the things, you know, in an earlier session where we were talking about addiction to things, right? You just become addicted to it. And whenever you're addicted to something, then you lose your sense of awareness about that it's driving you.
Yeah.
And so you just have to stop, you know, or if you're so wound up in it, you know, do a little thing throughout the day to kind of review what happened, right? What went on in your day. And then try to slowly implement being aware of how you feel throughout the day, right? You know, if you start running around and everything and you know, and you have a moment of awareness, you know, stop and think about that and go, oh yeah, you know, He
Okay.
said this is something he's done with me personally. Like if I start to get worked up, he'll immediately say, "Dude, stop." I'll hear him so clear, "Stop," and then he'll say, "Okay, now you need to just uh, take a deep breath, right?" And for me, what I used that helps me to relax aside from breathing is I will envision like white and pink light over me.
Mm.
I mean, that's so like, airy fairy,
Well, if it
but
works.
but it works,
Hmm.
and then I just relax, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but that's just what he does with me. For every single person, it could be different. But the bottom line, the thing that's always consistent is you have to stop and become aware of what's going on, and then
Well, it's hard
shift.
for. Go ahead.
Well, Eric says, because for you and for some people, it can be very difficult to do that throughout the day.
Mm.
Um, when you have a constant bombardment of like other people,
Yeah.
and for me, I mean, I'm just here with my dog. Um, so it's a practice scenario though, but because Eric says it's still possible because it really only takes a second. Eric says, if you start to feel overwhelmed or there are a lot of people coming into your experience, once those, there's always going to be a break of at least a few seconds, right? And then you can stop, take a deep breath, do a visual if you need to,
Hmm.
and allow your body to relax.
Okay.
Right? You have to feel that. Eric said that's what's important. When your body feels relaxed, your emotions uh, uh, are also going to be that way.
Okay.
Your body responds to how you feel emotionally.
Sure. But to me, I mean, I'm constantly bombarded by Facebook private messages, emails from blog members, and all
Well,
that.
he says in Two Mom, he said there is the ability though to set off a little block of time,
Hmm.
right? Even if it's just 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and just do that. You can close your eyes, for instance, and do a little meditation or
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
Something quick like that. You do that once or twice a day, or even more. Even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes,
Hmm.
if you break it down in small increments like that. He said, in fact, because human beings' attention span has, um, evolved to be shorter, right? Then we have to adapt our lives around that, right? Because it's not bad that our attention span got shorter,
Yeah, that's
right?
what I was going to ask you. Is there any positive to it? Or
Well,
what are the positives and the negatives?
he said, what I'll tell you about that is it has something to do with time itself.
Hmm.
It's like it's kind of a reflection of like a metaphor for how humans are evolving quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker, and so our perception of time is evolving with that as well, right?
Okay.
So he says it's not got to, it has nothing to do with uh, us maybe becoming more gullible because we don't see things further out,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Hmm.
If anything, we're just getting smaller chunks of a wider picture, right? So he said, think of it like this, think of a person who writes something that is only two or three sentences, and yet when you read it, it seems so much more expansive than that.
True.
Those 3 minutes of information that we get, for some people, they will learn, and more humans will learn how to pull in more within that smaller chunk of time.
So we can distill information better,
Right?
maybe?
He says, in fact, this is he says, think of it as like slowly pushing humans evolving to a point of living in a moment of now. Now is always
Mm.
just, it's there's really no measure of time for it because now is always changing, right?
Yeah.
You can think of it as a metaphor for that.
You can't even say it's an instant because an instant
No,
sounds like it actually takes some time.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
He said, and as more humans uh, awaken to their abilities outside of just the physical world, the things that
Hmm.
we can see and touch and smell and taste and all that,
Right.
it'll be necessary to process greater amounts of information in smaller
Mm.
chunks. He said a lot of mediums, this is what they do. They get, or people who might have abilities to pick up on telepathic information from other living beings
Yeah.
or deceased. This is, he said, what they're doing, right? A
Well,
lot of it is if you talk to them, their attention span is only in that second little moment where they're hearing what the spirit is saying.
mm.
And as soon as the spirit says what they say, if the person doesn't say it right away, it's gone. They cannot remember what it
Mm.
was, right?
Yeah. Well, it seems like if you have to distill something to such a contracted period of time, that you're not going to get as much information in sentences or phrases, but in feelings and in
Yes,
intuition and things like
it will
that,
be
because that
much
can
more
push, or
effective. That's
visuals,
right.
things like
Eric,
that.
Eric says because the long term, what we're doing is we're not necessarily evolving away from language,
Mm-hmm.
spoken language. We're just learning how to take language and, or we're learning how to expand our language in ways that is not spoken. So it's through
Okay.
feeling and intuition and those kinds of things. And there's so much information that can be received from that.
Right, like a picture is worth 1,000 words. That whole thing. Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
Symbols,
Yeah.
emotional symbols and such can
You
convey
know,
a lot more information than a paragraph of
well,
text.
because Eric says, in order for humans to be able to continue their evolution, they have to break the barriers of physicality.
Mm-hmm.
Because, once you explore all of that, all the physicality of yourself, you'll find that, there is a hard and fast boundary to it, right? And
Yeah.
you'll always be stuck in that little box.
Mm.
So you have to learn ways to be able to go outside of that,
Mm.
right? He said this is where, creativity is so important. He says the honest truth is, uh, from a collective perspective, anything that can be imagined can be achieved,
Mm.
right? You may, as an individual, may not be able to do it, right? But as collectively, it can happen,
Okay.
you know.
So is that why we like texts now instead of phone calls? Instead of calling, Aunt Mary, hey, you want me to come over for a visit? Well, what
Eric
time?
said,
Well, what should I
Eric,
wear? Instead of, what's up? Coming over.
well, Eric says, Mom. He says, here's a little tidbit in how that's helpful with connecting the spirit. It's in a way a very subtle way of letting you feel like you have a connection to someone when they're not physically there,
Mm.
right? Same thing happened though when we developed phones
Mm.
and you know things like that, right? Where there wasn't a lot of
Right.
face to face.
Mm-hmm.
The face to face is getting more and more. It's changing, right?
Yeah.
So people can pick up on the abstract sense of connection.
Mm.
Now he says, right now humans are learning how to integrate that into themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's always going to be a little bit of needing face to face, or there's going to be
Yeah.
some degree of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But um, some of the symptoms of them learning how to integrate that in is you'll see higher rates of depression and anxiety, right?
Mm.
Because people are learning how to use the tool. Their
Yeah.
bodies are adapting, and anytime the physical form is its energy is changing in a way,
It can
there'll be
cause trouble.
there'll be some kind of a symptom of that,
Yeah.
you know. And usually, if it's affecting the mind, then it will be which it always does. Typically, all evolution happens from up here. Then there'll be anxiety and depression about it, you know.
Yeah. Well, that sucks. Well, to me, I've been always raised by very high achieving parents. You're like, you have to be productive or you're a loser. So to me, if I just sit there and don't do anything, um, I feel
That's just not
guilty.
acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah, so I always have to be. I have a to-do list. I keep adding things to my to-do list, and bam, 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 gotta just crank it out.
So they taught Eric said so. Mom, they taught you to be your own taskmaster.
I know.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm gonna have to put meditate for 5 minutes on my to-do list. A few times a day.
Well, if that process works, Eric says, Mom, which it does, because Eric says what'll happen with you if you don't have your list is you'll start to worry. Oh my God, did I forget something? Did I forget something?
I know.
And and he said, well, that's not helpful, is it? So keep your list.
I'm gonna keep it, man. I'm sticking to it. I get
It's
shit done, man.
it's
I
your
do. I'm very productive. So hey,
and that
so
makes
that's
you
not
feel
bad.
good.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? He's thinking more of it, and that's something he was just getting ready to. He was saying while I said what I said. He said basically, if you feel happy and you feel pumped about something, right? He said, well, there's nothing wrong with that. He said, what I'm
Okay.
talking about is people who they keep going, and they get to the point where they get physically ill
They
and
burn out.
yeah, they get
Okay.
burned out and they have started having mental health
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah, that's not
depression,
good. Yeah.
physical ailments.
Okay.
That's where the slow it down comes in, especially
So
for those people. But he said even the ones though who get a charge from it, they need a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
Eventually their bodies will start saying, well, I gotta, but
Yeah.
their minds won't, right?
I
And
know.
that's where and if you
That
haven't been doing,
disconnect sucks.
right, if you haven't been doing the work to learn how to be quiet, to be
Mm.
calm, then when you get to a place where your body will no longer allow you to be kinetic, you're going to have more, you could potentially have more suffering, right? You're going to
Yeah.
start feeling trapped in your own body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that would be torture.
So he said, this is why I've said what I said.
Yeah. Anything else about this subject before we close?
No, but he had one other subject. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about it.
Well, what is it? But this is people's attention span are short, so we can't make these YouTubes very long.
Exactly.
What would that be about?
Eric said the perfect amount of time is 10 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I try to do, no longer than 20.
Yeah.
Well, what did you want to talk about?
It's very quick. You know what? It may not be very helpful. Maybe you'll want to cut it out afterwards. But it was how to figure out a premonition from your own mind,
Okay.
like thoughts in your own mind. It was really simple. But I argued with him a little bit about it.
Okay.
He said basically with a premonition, the way you can tell the difference is a premonition will just pop into your head, and you won't necessarily have a strong emotional reaction to it.
Mm.
And it may be something very disconnected from you.
Okay.
Right? If it's your own thoughts, though, most of the time it will be because, okay, so I don't know, say for instance, you have an issue where you start thinking, I don't know, you're going to lose your job or something, right?
Okay.
And, you know, some people might see that as a premonition that they're going to lose their job.
Mm-hmm.
But Erik says you have to stop and take a step back and start to think to yourself, okay, well, actually, is it just because I'm so stressed out and I'm not doing very well at my job, right? And then I'm starting to worry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Erik says in those instances, you have to look at that, right? There's a direct connection to you, and it's usually revolving around some insecurity you have.
Okay.
Right? So you have to look at it that way. Erik says another thing too is it's just a matter of time, right? You look at the time, you see a premonition of some sort, right? Mm-hmm. That maybe does provoke a lot of fear within you. Could be your insecurities though. But Erik says, well, then sit there and just observe. Does it end up happening?
Yeah.
Right? If it's something that you have no control over anyway, right?
Yeah.
Just watch it and see.
So then you can learn what premonitions feel like instead of fear wrapped up in your own thoughts that you produce with your imagination.
Because the argument I got into with him about was, well, what if it's a mom or a father who has this idea that maybe one of their kids are getting ready to die or something?
Yeah.
That would be a very strong reaction.
Yeah.
Right? But there's such a strong connection to their child that maybe that is true, right?
Okay, well, we do have a subject that I do want to talk about in link, so maybe we'll add this to basically the nature of fear, and then we could talk more about premonitions and stuff in that session. I think that sounds good. Yeah. All right, well, thank you, Erik. Thank you, Robert. Everybody love you. Stay tuned for the messages at the end of this video. Okay. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Voy a cantar esta canción con mucho cariño de mi corazón a la República Dominicana, la casa del merengue y la casa de la bachata. Voy a cantar esta canción con mucho cariño de mi corazón a la República Dominicana, la casa del merengue y la casa de la